So the concept of the class that we're going to be doing today is going to be actually going through a specific book. Today will be an introduction, and I'm going to share my screen to show you the book that we'll be going through. And I want to show you the sefer, the book that we'll be going through. So could you guys see this? Could you guys see it? All right, it's called the Chafetz Chaim. Right, it's a Chafetz Chaim Daily Compassion, and it's the blue one. It's the newer one that they have, this one goes through a daily schedule. Right, it goes through the daily thing. Right, it's what we're going to do is we're going to go through it. I'm going to end the share because you guys saw it. If anybody's interested in purchasing it, you could feel free to do it on your own, or feel free to please let me know, and we could try to order it in bulk, and I will order it, and then you could come pick it up for me, and hopefully it'll come out cheaper. I spoke to the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. If we get a couple of people to do it together, right, we could get it for cheaper, and in that way, right, we will all have the same book, and we could go through it together. Now, you guys can look at it ahead. It is in English. You guys can look at it ahead. Feel free to do that. We will expand on the halakha. We'll expand on the philosophy, and we'll see if we do one lesson or we do two lessons. It all depends on how the class goes. But the classes will be anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes, not longer than 45 minutes. But it'll probably be in between a half hour to 45 minutes. That's how long the classes are going to be. So for an introduction for today's class and the importance of the idea of Lashon Hara and evil talk, and as the title is said, the mouth is mightier than the sword, right? And that's really a coming from King Solomon in Proverbs. He says, "Life and death are in the hands of the tongue." Life and death are in the hands of the tongue, and we are all too familiar with this concept. And we're all too familiar of how someone that could really hurt you, right, could destroy you, right, by some words, right? And we're not even again. We're going to go through the laws. What is it? What categories? Prohibited laws, what the philosophy behind certain things, and there's so many different questions that one could say. What happens if someone asks me a question about an individual? Am I allowed to say something? Am I not allowed to say something? I remember when I was a younger man, and in the dating scene, right? The big question was, right? Are you allowed to, someone asks about someone that you're looking to date, or if someone asks about you, or someone asks you about a friend of yours that they're checking out to make sure that it's a appropriate match. What are you allowed to say? What are you not allowed to say? There's so many details, right, regarding the technical component, which also then turns into the philosophy behind it. And that's going to be the prime of what we're going to go into. Business workers, family, friends. Are you allowed to, there shouldn't be any secrets between a husband and wife. Between me and you, there's always secrets between a husband and wife, right? But there shouldn't be any secrets between a husband and wife. But how much is a husband allowed to tell a wife, or a wife allowed to tell a husband, right? If they saw something, they heard something, just because they want to have a good conversation that night over a bottle of wine, doesn't mean to say that they're allowed to gossip either, right? The Talmud says something very striking. The Talmud says that, people will be judged on the conversations in the conversations in private that a husband and wife has, right? People will be judged on that, because just because you're a husband and wife, just because you're best friends, just because you have coffee every morning together, right, doesn't mean to say that you could go ahead and gossip or talk evil or negative about someone else. Right? So there's a slew of scenarios and cases, right, and topics that we have to analyze, right, and go into regarding the laws of speech. And as we said, King Solomon said that the sword is mightier than the mouth is mightier than the sword. Hey, we got our first social distancing student here. Excellent. Welcome, Emily. Thank you for joining us. we're so excited to be starting social distancing. So thanks for joining us. All right, so as I just mentioned, today's an introduction class. God willing, next week we will be starting the book, and I shared the screen, but I'll show you afterwards which one we'll be doing. And if people want to order it together, if you don't have it, right, we could do it together. So I want to talk a little bit about the concept of speaking, right, and the concept of talk, and what's the power behind it, right, and what's the significance of that it does have a power of talk. What does it mean exactly, right? So we know in the beginning of this week's Torah portion, last week's Torah portion, when God created man, right, it says that God created man, right, but he says, and he put into man nishmas chaim, a soul of man, right? Neshama, we know neshama is the soul. That's what we call neshama, soul. He gave man a part of himself. He blew into man, into the physical earth part of man, right? God took man from all parts of the earth, and he created the physical body, and he put into man a power of a neshama. Now, what is this neshama? So it's a spiritual concept. It's something that's mystical, something that's out there. The question is, right, what is it exactly? So we don't know, right? We don't know. You could have the most sophisticated machine, most sophisticated, examining machine and MRIs and whatever it is, even if you go to sci-fi kind of machines, right, can detect, all these different molecules and red lights and blue lights and yellow lights and who knows what. You won't be able to detect the neshama because it's a spiritual thing. It's beyond the scope of this, of the physical world. But the Onkelos, the Targum Onkelos, gives us a little explanation of what he interprets, right, and explains of what the neshama means. And he says, the power of speech. He says the neshama is the power of speech. Now, what does it mean that neshama is the power of speech? What does that mean exactly? And the neshama is the power of speech, right? Speech is a physical thing, right? We're able to speak. We have a vocal cord, and we have this, and we have that. We can speak. Why speech? Something called, right, the power of from the neshama. So the commentaries explain is because, go ahead, Onkelos. Right, the Onkelos is a commentary on the side of the Chumash. Almost every Chumash has an Onkelos. Just a little history, right? Onkelos was actually a convert, right? Onkelos was a convert, and he was a nephew of a Roman, the Roman Caesar, right? He was a nephew of the Roman Caesar, and he was sent. He was a general himself, and he was sent to the Jewish people, right, as a general to try to convince them and try to get them to stop practicing Judaism, because at the time there was persecution after the destruction of the Second Temple, right? And he went to speak to one of the rabbis, and he got engaged in a conversation, right? And he decided to convert. He decided, hey, I'm not stopping them from doing this. I'm joining them, right? And the story goes, the Talmud tells us, the Midrash also speaks about this, that then the Caesar, who I forgot which one it was at the time, right, sent different messengers to Onkelos to try to convince him to come back. And every messenger he sent, right, he convinced them. So he converted them, right? He convinced them to join the Jewish people. So finally he realized what was going on, so he stopped sending people. And I don't remember the end of the story exactly, right? But he stopped sending people. But so Onkelos became actually a student of Rabbi Lezer, right? The great rabbis of the Mishnah era, right? And he became a powerhouse in Judaism, and something that we read all the time, something that we learn all the time. So Onkelos is just the power, so many power of where one could achieve, right? It's interesting, just something to think about. One could achieve from nothing to greatness. So one should never underestimate themselves and say, well, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. Kiva is another one of those stories, but I don't want to get off topic. So Onkelos says that the power of speech, right, is the neshama. That's the neshama, the power of speech. So what does that mean exactly? So where else do we find that we identify the concept of speech? Where else do we find in the Torah, right, that the power of speech is identified, right, sort of contrary to the sword, right? This, as the title was, the mouth is stronger, is more powerful than the sword. Where do we find, right, that the mouth, talking about the contrast between the mouth and the sword? Anybody? And you guys can unmute yourself if you want. I allow that.
Where does it compare it in the Torah?
Yeah.
A mouth and a sword?
Yes. Anybody know? Okay. So, right? So in a couple of weeks Torah portion, we're going to be speaking about twins, right? There's a lot of brothers in this, in Bereshis is a common theme, right? And in but there's one set of brothers that are twins. And who are they? Yaakov and Esau. And so when Jacob, when he speaks to Esau, and after Yaakov, Jacob, his brother, swindled him out of his blessings, and so Esau says, Father, I want a blessing. Like, come on, please. So what does he say? He says, Al Tarbaka Tassim, you'll live on your sword. And there's a line there that says, Hakol Kol Yaakov, Va'yadayim de Esau. The voice was the voice of Yaakov, but Hayadayim, the hands, right, are the hands of Esau. And so when Jacob was talking, trying to convince his father that he was Esau, so he put on, wool to convince him that he's a hairy guy, right? Some people are a little hairier than others, right? So Esau was really, really hairy, right? And Jacob had to put on, wool to pretend that he was hairy. But when he spoke, he couldn't convince his father that he was speaking like an Esau, right? He still had his way of speaking. So his father said, Hakol Kol Yaakov, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, means to say not the type of voice. He had a squeaky voice, or he had a very loud voice or a deep voice. That's not what it's referring to as a kol. It means to say the mannerism of his speech, the way he spoke was Kol Kol Yaakov. And Yadayim, the hands, were the hands of Esau. So we see another idea of comparing and contrasting the physical, the hands, the physical, the sword, right? Doing things with hands, and the voice. And Yaakov is known as the person with the voice. Now the commentaries say, what is it called Yaakov, the voice of Yaakov? What is the voice of Yaakov? Commentaries, the voice of Yaakov is prayer. And the voice of Yaakov is davening, is prayer. And I think I mentioned this in another class, and I don't recall when, right? But I mentioned this in another class. There's an idea that when one prays, one has to verbalize his words. One should not pray like this. Actually, one should verbalize. You should be able to hear. The Talmud says, Shema Yisrael. Why does it say Shema, listen? Right? So there's a literal translation. But the Talmud learns from there, Shema Yisrael, Shema, listen to what you have to hear, what comes out of your mouth. You have to actually hear the words that you're saying. You actually have to verbalize and speak out the words. When you pray, you have to verbalize them. You have to speak them out. You shouldn't pray by mumbling. I tell my kids all the time when they do Berchat Hamazon or other things, say the words. Don't just read with the eyes. You're not reading a novel or a history book or looking at a math question. Right? You're praying. You're making a blessing. And when you make a blessing, you're actually supposed to verbalize the words. You shouldn't do it with your eyes because you have to use your pen. You have to use your mouth. As the mouth is the power of prayer, the mouth is a power of Yaakov. Okay, very nice. Why can I pray by just reading it with my eyes? My eyes, or knowing it and seeing it in my brain? What's the power of speech? So we find another place of speech, right? Where else do we find speech? Very famously in this past week's Parsha, Parshas Bereshis. Says God said, right? God said, "Vayhi ar," there should be light, and God said, right? There should be. Oops, sorry, right? And God said that God said there should be the earth should split, and God, right? In Ethics of Our Father that we learned, all right? It was probably about 1.5 years ago that we did that one, right? It says Asara Mamarim, in 10 words, right? God created the world. Asara Mamarim, 10 words. So we see that the creation comes from Dibur, right? Dibur also could be translated into Davar. What is a Davar? A thing, right? A Davar is a thing, right? So when we speak, we are creating reality. It's not just talk. Oh, it's just talk. It's just gossip, right? It's just smoozing. It's a big deal. When you are speaking, you are actually creating a reality through your speech. You're creating a reality through your speech. You might not see it. It might not come into your existence right away, but you're creating a reality with your speech. And therefore, when we pray, we are supposed to pray we're supposed to create realities of prayers. We are supposed to create angels up in heaven. We're supposed to create different things with our prayers. So therefore, we have to speak. We have to verbalize it. And how does speech have that power to create it? That brings us back to Onkelos. I wrote, Onkelos said that what's the power of the neshama, the power of speech? Because it's a spiritual thing that we're creating. And it's a spiritual concept that we're creating. And that comes from the energy of the neshama, the energy of our soul, right? Which we translate as soul, right? What is exactly, we don't know. But the energy of the neshama, right, is the power of speech. It creates reality, but in a spiritual realm. Now that spiritual realm sometimes creates in the physical realm. Now we know how speech could create things. You could close business deals with speech, right? You could ruin someone's career with speech. You could ruin someone's self-esteem with speech, right? You could harm people. You could uplift them. A couple of nice words, a couple of bad words, gossip, speaking behind their back, truth or false. We know how speech could also create reality. We know that. So back to what we're saying, as King Solomon says, life and death are in the hands of the tongue, right? The lashon, the tongue, right, is the power, creates speech, right? If you don't have a tongue, you can't speak, right? But say the commentaries, right? It's fascinating. The mouth is something very fascinating. We have one tongue, we have a set of teeth, and we have lips. So you could really close your mouth with a double cover, right? Go like this. But when you go like this, right, you could actually create sound also, right? What are they called? Ventriloquists or something like that, right? The people that speak through puppets.
Oh,
yeah, ventriloquists, right? I know there's a very famous one that was an American Got Talent, girl, right? She became very famous. That's very cool. I actually watched a couple of those of hers, right? So when they speak, they actually speak with their teeth closed, right? Their mouth is usually open, right? Like this. I don't know how they do it. That's why I'm not doing that, and I don't get paid money to do that. Right? But there's a talent to being able to do that. So when you close just your teeth, right? You don't have the power to speak like you normally do, and not everybody could. But there's still an ability to project sound through it. But when your mouth, when your lips are closed, you can't. You go, but you can't really speak. Right? So therefore, say the commentaries that God, right, in his ultimate wisdom, created safeguards for us, trying to teach us that we have to put safeguards in our speech, and created our mouth set up in a way, right, that we're able to control it, that we could, certain things we could say and certain things we can't say. Let's say only our teeth are closed, right? So we could say certain sounds. I can still talk a little bit. It sounds a little funny, right? But if my lips are closed, I can't say anything. That for us to realize that we also have to be conscious and thinking about that not everything that we want to say should be coming out. Some things yes, some things not. But not everything that we want to say should be coming out, because speech could create, right? Speech has a power, right, of creating reality, right? So yes, go ahead, Emily. Go ahead. Just take your mask off so people could hear.
Okay, sorry. Where is the Onkelos reference? Is it in the Chumash?
Yes, thank you. Susan, Emily wants to know, where is the Onkelos? Onkelos is in the Chumash. It's actually in the Blue Art School Chumash also. It's almost every Chumash you have. The only time it's not in is if it's just a Tanakh, which doesn't have any commentaries. So then, like the whole thing in one book. Right? But almost everyone has a Chumash. It has a Rashi and an Onkelos. Right? Other commentaries not everyone has, but Rashi and Onkelos have become the staple, right, of the commentaries on the Chumash, to the extent, I'll tell you an interesting halacha, interesting law, right, since you asked that, right, to the extent that actually there's a halacha, there's a law, right, that one has to study the parsha every week. It's in the Code of Jewish Law, in the laws of Shabbat, right? That one should study during the week the parsha, the parsha of that week, right? One should do that, right? One should do that. And it's brought down in the Code of Jewish Law that one should do it with unkelos. And then the commentaries expand on it and say, now that we have the commentary Rashi, right, one should do it with unkelos and Rashi. Right, so we see the staples of unkelos and Rashi are to such a degree that they are become part of the law, right? Halakha, right? If you don't do it, it's not like halakha that you're going to get punished if you don't do it. It's one of those things that you should do and be proactive, and it's something that one should do. Part of preparing himself to know what that week's Torah portion is, and to expand his learning. But the commentaries, Rashi and unkelos, become such a staple that in the law of reviewing the parsha during the week before like this week, we're supposed to do Parshas Noach, one is supposed to do unkelos and Rashi together in it. So it's become such a staple. So now, go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I meant like, where is it? The reference you're saying where like the neshama, the speech is the neshama.
It's in. I can show you after class, but it's in where it says that God blew into man nishmas chaim.
Oh,
it's in the Torah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the Bereshis. Yeah, that, right, like in chapter 2, verse something. I don't remember exactly.
So it's like when God is creating man, he says
that. Yeah. Okay, so now I want to finish off. I want to finish off with just a couple of examples, right? That sometimes the Talmud brings down, right? That how lashon hara can kill. And just certain examples of that we should think about, and then, as we said, next week, God willing, we will start the book itself. Right? I ordered it. I didn't get it yet, but it should be coming soon. Right? For myself, and if you guys want to order it, just a couple examples of how lashon hara could actually kill someone. Right? And a couple of examples of why sometimes we sort of push away and say it's not such a big deal. So the Talmud, right? The Talmud tells us like this, right? The one who is this Talmud tells us something very interesting. The lashon hara kills 3 people. When someone speaking lashon hara kills 3 people, the one who is spoken about his reputation is ruined, right? So let's say Reuben and Shimon, right? Mike and Jack are talking about Levi, right? They're talking about a certain person. So the person that's being spoken about, and that we mentioned before, is getting ruined, right? So not physically killed, and it could lead actually. Sometimes someone becomes oppressed, they become ruined in their reputation, their finances, their family, right? They said the person cheated. He's a liar. He's just an evil person, and he's not, or even if he is, right? Again, there's lashon hara and rechilas, and we'll talk about those if it's true or if it's not true. They're both prohibited in certain cases, usually. Certain cases where you're allowed to say it when it's true. But even if it's true, right? If you just go ahead and randomly tell people, and this person's evil and this and that, and they're a cheater, and you shouldn't trust them, and they cheat on their spouse, they cheat on their business, they cheat on their friend, right? So people are going to stay away from them. If it's true or if it's not true, right? It doesn't make a difference, but you're ruining the person. You're killing them, just their life, their social life, and it could lead to actual killing. The person become depressed and kill themselves, right? Or if you say lies about them, that they cheated certain people, and those people don't like to hear that they got cheated, and they'll go and harm the person. And that's also possible, right? If you say things about the person, true or not true, that he cheated some people, and those people might not like it, right? So the person that is spoken about could be killed either physically or more of a concept, but his life could be killed. Then the one who speaks lashon hara, he transgresses and lowers himself spiritually. Because as we said, and every aveirah that you do, and I want to talk about this for a minute, every aveirah, every transgression that we do, right? Of course, we lower our spirituality, right? That's how it works, right? We talked about this many times, that the mitzvot, right, have a positive spiritual energy, and aveirah, transgression, has a negative spiritual energy, right? Why do certain things have a positive and negative? Take it up with God. This is the way it is. Why can't I eat potatoes? It harms my body. That's just the way it is. I don't know. Right? That's how God made me. Right? So too, there are certain things that help us spiritually grow, and there's certain things that are harmful to us spiritually because there's a negative spiritual energy to them. And that's why certain foods are kosher and certain foods are not kosher. Certain actions we're allowed to do, certain actions we're not allowed to do. So really every mitzvah helps us grow spiritually, and every transgression, every aveira moves us away from spirituality. So why is the Talmud homing in on Lashon Hara as that's the one that kills them, because spiritually? Every mitzvah is like that. The answer is, like we spoke about beforehand, because when one speaks Lashon Hara, right, when one talks evil and uses his mouth for negative, and not only is he infusing in himself a negative, but what he's doing is he's taking the thing that allows him to be spiritual and infusing that with toxins. Right? Infusing, it's like taking your drinking water and infusing it with toxins, with dangerous chemicals. So you can't drink anymore. Right? As we said, Lashon Hara, the mouth is a spiritual entity. The Vilna Gaon, and Chavetz Chaim talks about this. Right? The Vilna Gaon talks about how the mouth is a spiritual energy because the mouth creates, as we said, but you can't see it. You can't see it. You can't feel it. Right? It's something that is there. We hear it. Right? We hear the talk, but it creates things without feeling or seeing, which is a spiritual concept. Right? So the mouth, the peh, as Uncle has said, comes from the energy of our neshama. So when we ruin it, and when we go ahead and create negative energy out of it, we're not just injecting ourselves with some negative energy. It's not like I'm eating some potatoes. Right? It's like someone that's deathly allergic to something, and he takes that. So what they're doing is they're compromising their air pipes. They're compromising their ability to breathe. So it's not just infusing a little negative energy, which is terrible, and we have to stop that, and we have to try to infuse positive energy. But when one speaks Lashon Hara, they're compromising and ruining, right, their source of spirituality. And so therefore, it is, the Talmud tells us that is as if you're killing yourself. Right? It's as if you are spiritually harming yourself every time you speak negative about someone else, true or not true. And the third person is the one who listens to Lashon Hara, because he's providing the speaker with the opportunity to transgress, and also his opinion of the one who has spoken about his ruin. Right? So this is something very important. This is something that we don't really find with any other thing. If for whatever reason, right, let's say you're on the street and you see someone killing someone else, right? So let's say you don't protest or whatever it is. Let's say you don't have the ability to, or you do, or you don't. And it's not as if you killed a person, right? If you went and helped the person, of course. But if you just saw it from a distance, or you just, saw it on television, right, or whatever it is, you don't get the avera for that. You don't get the transgression for that. You see someone stealing something. You see, someone eating non-kosher, right? You don't get it. Yes, there's an obligation to try to stop someone, right? We're responsible for all our brethren to help them out, and that's a tricky slope of how to do that, right? That you have to make sure that they'll listen to you. If they don't listen to you, then you're just, creating animosity between the two, and that's an interesting discussion of when and not, and that's not our class right now, right? But say the commentaries, right? By Lashon Hara, when one hears Lashon Hara, it is as if he spoke Lashon Hara. Because hearing Lashon Hara, if let's say you have no one to say Lashon Hara to, you're not going to say Lashon Hara. And even if you say, let's say I go and I lock myself in the room, right? And there's no sound, no way of my sound to penetrate the room, my voice to penetrate, even though I have a loud voice, right? But it's not able to penetrate the room. And I go ahead and I speak. I say, oh, that person, and how they do that. And I go ahead and I yabble away, right? There's no transgression of Lashon Hara. Maybe I'm saying negative about people, and that could be other things. I'm embarrassing people, and I have a negative view on things. But Lashon Hara could only be if someone else hears it. We'll see that, right? Lashon Hara is a two-person thing. It has to be the speaker and the makabel, the one that's listening to it. So the person that's listening, you could sometimes people say, "Well, I didn't say lashon hara. I'm just said, I'm at Kiddush. One day we'll have Kiddush again, right? What I'm at Kiddush, and I'm just, I'm just standing on the side. I like hearing a good gossip. I would never say lashon hara. I would never talk evil about people. I just say I like hearing. I like listening. You are as if you spoke lashon hara. Because lashon hara, the listening of lashon hara, right, is as if you speak lashon hara, and therefore you yourself are getting killed also. Right? You yourself are getting killed. The Talmud says, therefore, 3 people, when lashon hara is being spoken, 3 people are being killed: the person that is being talked about, the person that is speaking, and the person that is listening. And just one more thing, and then we'll end with this, right? And then we'll open up the questions and answers. Is that the common things, right? And the Chavetz Chaim goes into this much more. This is more of an introduction class, right? Some of the common things of why people will speak lashon hara. It's important that people know, right? This is very important that people know. It could be it is, right? But there's laws, and we'll see. There's laws of who you're allowed to tell to and who you're not, and when you're allowed to say, when you're not allowed to say, right? It's not a big deal. It's like not really a big thing. I'm just like, we're just having a good conversation, right? No one's gonna get hurt. I'm just gossiping with my friends. It's over a beer. It's over a coffee. It's over herring. It's not a big deal, right? People say it's not a big deal. What could words do? Right? The ones we just said. I'm not speaking lashon hara. I'm just listening to lashon hara. And there's many others that people say sometimes, right? That what they convince themselves that they're not doing such a bad thing, right? And again, we're going to get into that in the class. And there's I think 120 lessons or something like that. We'll probably do more than one a day, but we'll see how that lesson goes. But I look forward to doing this together with all of us. But let's not forget, the mouth is very powerful. And we have the ability to create good out of it, prayer, saying kind things to people. The mouth creates reality. It's called an adava. It's called taking a vow. Right? You could create a reality of taking a vow. If you say that I want to give charity, right? You're obligated to give that charity, right? Depends how you say it. Say, I want to give $100 to Eitz Chaim, to our academy, to the Kolo, right? To whatever organization you want to give to. You have created the reality. You have to give that money now. And to the extent that it's as if you gave that money. Let's say you're doing it for the health of someone, right? In the merit of the tzedakah, someone to get health, to get better. It's as if you gave it, even if you haven't given it. That's a pledge. The mouth is very powerful. We underestimate it. And for good or for bad. So let's remember that as we go into our days, right? And reflect. And nowadays, right, we have so much opportunity to do good or bad. It's so powerful, positively and unfortunately negatively, right? Every person has an opportunity to have a talk show, to have a podcast, to have a video, to have a YouTube channel, to have a Facebook Live, to have a this, to have a that, right? Every person could write things, right? They do on their phone, right? They have, there's so many different social media networks out there that I'm not even familiar with. Right, my kid was telling me their friend was on something, TikTok or something like that. Right, I said, you don't have TikTok, right? You don't even have a phone for that reason, right? But there's so many things out there. We have to be so careful, right? And as educators and as parents, as family members, we also have to make sure that we are thinking about the people that are under our care, people that we're responsible for. Make sure that we don't put obstacles in front of them to feel that this disease that's out there to say and to create negative about people. There's a whole entity out there. There's a whole social media of pranking people, of saying things about people. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. But it can really hurt someone. It can really, really hurt someone, even if it's just a joke. So let's think about this, and in the merit of doing this class, really all lashon hara is a very powerful thing that is really dangerous and harmful, and I'm very excited about doing this. I've gone through the book of lashon hara of the Chavetz Chaim many years ago, I did it with the Hebrew, not in the English one. It's the same thing, but it's set up a little different. I'm very excited to be doing this. I have to go through it again and review it and so I'm extremely excited about it, and I'm very excited to be doing with all of you. So please feel free, tell your friends to join us. Every day is a new lesson, right? Every day will be a continuation from the one before, but a separate entity by itself. And again, they'll all be recorded. And if, again, just a reminder, if anybody wants the book, you can either order it by yourself, send me a message if you don't remember which one it is, or if just let me know and we could try to order it together, see if we get a discount. I think we have to get 10 people together to get a little discount. I'm not sure, 10 or 15 people. But if not, you know, I can just get the book and we'll be, God willing, starting next week with that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to stop the recording